Okay, so today we are going to continue the previous chapter that we had started earlier. Okay, so we are now discussing the sixth chapter from Art and Culture NCERT Fine Arts book, and in that sixth chapter, what we have covered till now, we have understood the basic features of the temple architecture in India. Then we have learned about the Nagara style of temple architecture in detail. Okay, Nagara means those kind of temple architecture that we find in the northern India, okay, from west to east. Then we have discussed about the Dravidian style of temple architecture. Okay, so we have learned about the Dravidian style of temple architecture. And then today we are going to understand, few more important things related to Buddhist and Jainism type of temple architecture. Okay, so today it is going to be a concluding session for the like temple architectures. Okay, from sixth chapter of NCERT. Okay, so just allow me a minute. I'll be sharing my screen of the laptop so that like we can continue the discussion on that chapter. So it is just going to be a reading session. Reading session means like I may ask some of you to read the chapter. So it is just a reading session from the book itself. Then I'll be telling about what we get out of reading these chapters. Okay, so let us continue reading the chapter. Okay, so I'm sharing the screen. It will be visible to you soon. Okay. So be online. Okay. So we will continue reading from this portion, okay, which is like we are going to understand about Buddhist and Jain architectural development in India. Okay, so we are going to understand about Buddhist and Jain architectural development. Okay, so I think some of you may have not joined who can read it better. So in that case, I'll be reading for like from your side, okay, from your perspective. And whatever important thing we come across, I'll be highlighting those important things also for you. Okay. So Buddhist and Jain architectural developments. So far, although we have focused on the nature and development in Hindu architecture from the 5th to 14th centuries, it must be constantly be kept in mind that this was also the very period when Buddhist and Jain developments were equally vibrant and often went hand in glove with Hindu ones. Sites such as Ellora have Buddhist, Hindu, and Jain monuments. Okay, so earlier also we have understood that Ellora means all. Here, like we find temples from all the periods. So sites such as Ellora have Buddhist, Hindu, and Jain monuments. However, Badami, Khajuraho, and Kannauj have the remains of any of the two, Badami, Badami, Khajuraho, and Kannauj have the remains of any of the two religious right next to each other. Okay, so this is another an important information from the chapter itself. Now, when the Gupta Empire, okay, when the Gupta Empire like is crumbled in the just a minute. Okay. Okay. So it is right. Okay. When the Gupta Empire crumbled in the 6th century CE, this eastern region, okay, this eastern region of Bihar and Bengal, historically known as Magadha, appears to have remained unified whilst numerous small Rajput principalities sprang up to the west. In the 8th century, the Palas came to power in the region. The second Pala ruler, Dharampala, became immensely powerful and established an empire by defeating powerful Rajput Pratiharas. Okay, so the thing is, Palas have defeated the Rajput Pratiharas. Dharampala consolidated an empire whose wealth lay in a combination of agriculture along with fertile Ganges plain and international trade. The preeminent Buddhist site is of course Bodh Gaya. Okay, the preeminent Buddhist site is of course Bodh Gaya. Bodh Gaya is a pilgrimage site since Siddhartha achieved enlightenment here and became Gautam Buddha. Okay, so the thing is, this is an important information that Bodh Gaya is a place where Siddhartha has achieved enlightenment and then he became Lord Buddha over here. Okay, while the Bodhi tree is of immense importance, the Mahabodhi temple at Bodh Gaya is an important reminder of the big work of that time. The first Shireen here, located at the base of the Bodhi tree, is said to have been constructed by King Ashoka. Okay, this is an important information that the first Shireen located at the base of Bodhi trees is said to have been constructed by Lord Ashoka. Okay, the Vedika around it is said to be a post-Mauryan period. Okay, of about 100 BCE. Okay, many of the sculptures in the niches in the temple are dated to the 8th century Pala period, while the actual Mahabodhi temple itself, as it stands now, is largely colonial period reconstruction of the old like 7th century design. The design of the temple is unusual. It is strictly speaking neither Dravida nor Nagara. It is narrow like Nagara temple but rises without curving like Dravida one. Okay, so the thing is the Mahabodhi temple that we find at Bodh Gaya. So it is neither a Buddhist, neither a Dravidian style of architecture nor a Nagara style of architecture. So the thing is, it has some features from Dravida, some features from Nagara style. So it is saying that it is strictly speaking neither Dravida nor Nagara. It is narrow like a Nagara temple, but it rises without curving like a Dravida one. Okay. So the thing is, if you talk about like Dravida style of temple architecture, they rise, but they have curves. But here in the Bodhi, like Mahabodhi temple at Bodh Gaya, they rise without having any curve over there. Okay. So to the right of this particular screen, you can see the image of Mahabodhi temple. Okay, you can see the image of Mahabodhi temple at Bodh Gaya over here. And let us move little down. So here we can see the remains of the Nalanda University. Okay, so like this was the historical Nalanda University. So this is the remains, like whatever is remaining there. So this is the remains of the Nalanda University now. So you can see the structure is very elaborate. So it is a magnificent structure. Okay, so like this was constructed uh, during the time when like during the time of 100th century BC. Okay, so around that particular time. So these are very old structures, especially the Mahabodhi temple. Okay, Nalanda University is also a historical site. Okay, now let us move little down. We will read the chapter further. Okay, the monastic university of Nalanda is a Mahavihara. Okay, the monastic university of Nalanda is a Mahavihara, as it is a complex of several monasteries of various sizes. Okay, till date, only a small portion of this ancient learning center has been excavated, as most of it lies buried under contemporary civilization, making further excavation almost impossible. Okay, so the thing is, till date, only a small portion of this ancient learning center has been excavated. Okay, as most of it lies buried under contemporary civilization, making further excavation almost impossible. Okay, so the thing is, only a portion of that Nalanda University had been excavated. Okay. Okay, so Gagan has shared the information that Nalanda University has been established by Kumara Gupta. Okay, that's all right. So most of the information about Nalanda is based on the records of uh, this Xuan Zhang. Okay, so most of the information that we get about Nalanda University is based on the information provided by Xuan Zhang, previously spelled as Huan Sang. Okay, so his name was previously spelled as Huan Sang. Okay, just a minute. Okay, so I'll be. Okay, please be online. I'll be right back in a minute. Okay. Just a minute, just a minute. Okay, so we were reading this particular chapter. So most of the information about Nalanda is based on, okay, Nalanda is based on the records of the Zhuan, Xuan Zhang, previously spelled as Hyun Sang. Okay, so his name was previously spelled as Hyun Sang, but actually like his name is Zhuan Zhang. Okay, Xuan Zhang, which states that the foundation of a monastery was laid by Kumaragupta I. Okay, so foundation of this particular monastery was laid by Kumaragupta I in the 5th century CE. Okay, it was laid by Kumaragupta I in the 5th century CE. So this is an important information to be noted. Okay, and this was carried forward by the later monarchs who built up a like a fantastic university here. There is evidence that all three Buddhist doctrines, okay, so there is evidence that all three Buddhist doctrines, okay, like Theravada, which is also known as Hinayana, then we have Mahayana and Vajrayana, were taught here, and monks made their way to Nalanda and its neighboring sites of Bodh Gaya and Kurikhar from China. Okay, neighboring sites of Bodh Gaya and Kurikhar from China, Tibet, and Central Asia in the north. Okay, and Sri Lanka, Thailand, Burma, and various other countries from the southeastern parts of Asia. So people used to come in the Nalanda University from these places. What are these places? These places are, you know, they used to come from China, Tibet, Central Asia, okay, in the north, and Sri Lanka, Thailand, Burma, and various other countries from the southeastern parts of the Asia. Okay, so these are the places from where, these people used to come. Then, if you talk about, okay, so let us read further about this chapter. Just a minute. Okay. Monks and pilgrims would take back small sculptures and illustrated manuscripts from here to their own countries. Okay, Buddhist monasteries like Nalanda thus were prolific centers of, okay, Buddhist monasteries like Nalanda thus were prolific centers of art production and had a decisive impact on the arts of all Buddhist countries in Asia. Okay, so the sculptural art of Nalanda in stucco, stone, and bronze developed out of a heavy dependence on the Buddhist Gupta art of Sarnath. By the 9th century, a synthesis occurred between the Sarnath Gupta idiom. Okay, so this is an important information that by 9th century, what happened? By 9th century, a synthesis occurred between the Sarnath Gupta idiom, the local Bihar tradition, and that of the central India, okay, leading to the formation of the Nalanda school of sculpture, characterized by distinctive facial features like body forms and treatment of clothing and jewelry. Okay, now let us read further. The characteristic features of Nalanda art, distinguished by its consistently high quality of workmanship, are that the precisely executed sculptures have an ordered appearance with little effect of crowding. Okay, the sculptures are also usually not flat in relief. Okay, sculptures are also usually not flat in relief, but are depicted in three-dimensional forms. The black slabs of the sculpture are detailed and the ornamentation delicate. Okay, so here they are discussing about the kind of sculptures that are found, you know, in Nalanda. Okay, so they are discussing about the features of the Nalanda art, that they are saying that like what are the features. So they are saying that, you know, they had ordered appearance with little effect of crowding. So the appearance of this of the, you know, sculpture in the Nalanda was ordered, so there was very less effect of crowding. So the crowding effect was not there, means crowd was not there, it was not congested. Okay, now the Nalanda bronze, like dating between the 7th and 8th centuries to approximately 12th century outnumbered the discovery of metal images from all other sites of eastern India and constitute a large body of Pala period metal sculptures. Okay, so like their stone counterparts, the bronze initially relied heavily on Sarnath and Mathura Gupta traditions. The Nalanda sculptures initially depict Buddhist deities of Mahayana pantheons such as standing Buddhas, okay, Bodhisattvas such as, so here these information are very important, okay. The Nalanda sculptures initially depict Buddhist deities, okay, of the Mahayana pantheon such as standing Buddha, Bodhisattvas and Manjushri Kumara, Avalokiteshvara seated on a lotus and Nagarjuna. So now they are talking about that the initial, like the Nalanda sculptures, the sculptures that we find at Nalanda, so they depict, like 5 times. Pantheon means like 5 types of, like Mahayana Buddhism. So there we can find this, 5 types of sculptures from the Mahayana Buddhism. They are, standing Buddha, then Bodhisattvas such as Manjushri Kumara, Avalokiteshvara, seated on a lotus, and Nagarjuna. Okay, Nagarjuna. During the late like 7th and 12th, okay, during the late 7th and 12th centuries, when Nalanda emerged as an important tantric center, the repertoire came to be dominated by Vajrayana, okay, Vajrayana deities such as, so here it is important, for you to remember the name of these Vajrayana deities or deities, okay. Who are the Vajrayana deities? So one of the deity is named over here. This is Vajra Shraddha. Okay, Vajra Sharada. Vajra Sharada, a form of Saraswati. Then we have Khasarpana. Okay, and Avalokiteshvara. Okay, so they belong to the Vajrayana sect of Buddhism. They belong to the Vajrayana sect of Buddhism. Now, depictions of crowned Buddhas occur commonly only after the 10th century. Okay, so the thing is, depiction of crowned Buddhas occur only after the 10th century. Interestingly, various Brahminical images not conforming to the Sarnath style have also been found at Nalanda. Okay, so various like various crowned Buddhas occur commonly after the 10th century. Okay, they are also found at Nalanda, mainly of which are still worshipped in small temples in villages around this site. Okay, so this is the thing. Now let us read further. Sirpur in Chhattisgarh is an early Odisha style site. Okay, so now they are talking about an Odisha style site over here. Okay, Sirpur. Okay, name of the site is Sirpur. Sirpur in Chhattisgarh is an early Odisha style site belonging to the period between 550 and 800 with both Hindu and Buddhist shrines. Okay, in many ways the iconographic and stylistic elements of the Buddhist sculptures here are similar to that of the Nalanda. Okay, so the thing is, they are saying that in many ways the iconographic and stylistic elements of the Buddhist sculptures here are similar to the Nalanda. Okay, so the kind of Buddhist sculpture that we find at Sirpur in Chhattisgarh, okay, so they are similar to the sculptures that we find at Nalanda. Okay, later, okay, just a minute. So we will be seeing the images later. Okay, so we will continue the reading first, then we will go through the images. Like so to see the images, we will have another session maybe. Okay, so major Buddhist monasteries developed in Odisha. Okay, Lalitgiri, Vajragiri and Ratnagiri are the most famous of them. Okay, so the thing is, if you talk about Buddhist, like major Buddhist monasteries, okay, that were developed in Odisha, those places are Lalitgiri, Vajragiri and Ratnagiri. Okay, so Lalitgiri, Vajragiri and Ratnagiri are the most famous of them. The port towns of Nagapattinam was also a major Buddhist center right until the Chola period. One of the reasons for this must have been its importance in the trade with Sri Lanka, where large number of Buddhists still live. Okay, bronze and stone sculpture in Chola style have come to light at Nagapattinam and generally date back to the 10th century. Okay, so Jains were prolific, Jains were prolific temple builders like Hindus, and their sacred shrines and pilgrimage spots are to be found across the length and breadth of India, except in the hills. Okay, so the thing is, so Jains were also very prolific temple builders like Hindus, and their temples are found almost in all parts of India except the hilly areas. Okay, this is the thing. The oldest Jain pilgrimage site are to be found in Bihar. Okay, so the thing is, the oldest Jain pilgrimage sites are found in Bihar. Many of these sites are famous for early Buddhist shrines. Okay, in the Deccan, some of the most architecturally important Jain sites can be found in Ellora and Aihole. Okay, so the thing is, if we talk about Deccan, so in the Deccan, some of the most architecturally important Jain sites are can be found at Ellora and Aihole. So these are the two important places in Deccan where we find Jain temples. What are those places? Ellora and Aihole. Okay, Aihole. Now in central India, Deoghar. Okay, when we talk about central India, it means Madhya Pradesh and regions around Madhya Pradesh. So in central India, Deoghar, Khajuraho, Chanderi and Gwalior have some excellent examples of Jain temples. Okay, then Karnataka has a rich heritage of Jain shrines, and Shravan-Belagola, the famous statue of Gomateshwara, the granite statue of Lord Mahabali, which stands 8 meters or 57 feet high. Okay, 18 meters or 57 feet high, is the world's tallest monolithic freestanding structure. Okay, so it is very important. Okay, so this everything that is written in this particular paragraph. Okay, the paragraph that has begun from last paragraph itself. So it is a like one of the most important paragraph. Okay, so here they have given a lot of information. So let us go through the information that they have shared over here. Okay, once again. So when we talk about central India, in central India, Deoghar, Khajuraho, Chanderi and Gwalior have some excellent examples of Jain temples. Okay, what are those places? Deoghar, Khajuraho, Chanderi and Gwalior. They have some excellent examples of Jain temples. And if you talk about Karnataka, okay, Karnataka has a rich heritage of Jain shrines, and at Shravan-Belagola, the famous statue of Gomateshwara, okay, the famous statue of Gomateshwara, the granite statue of Lord Bahubali, which stands 18 meters or 57 feet high, is the world's tallest monolithic freestanding structure. It was commissioned by this is Chamunda Raya. Okay, so it was commissioned by Chamunda Raya, or the General-in-Chief and Prime Minister of the Ganga Kings of Mysore. Okay, this is the thing. The Jain temples, okay, the Jain temples at Mount Abu, were constructed by Vimal Shah. Okay, the Jain temples at Mount Abu were constructed by Vimal Shah, like notable for a simplistic exterior. Okay, notable for a simplistic exterior in contrast with exuberant marble interiors. Their rich sculptural decoration with deep understanding, a deep undercutting creates a like lace-like appearance. Okay, then the temple is famous for its unique patterns on every ceiling. Okay, and the graceful brackets figure along the domed ceilings. Okay, this is an important information. The great Jain pilgrimage site in the this Shatrunjay Hills, okay, near Palitana in Kathiawar, Gujarat, is imposing with this course of temples clustered together. Okay, so this is again an important information. So they have given some information about the temples that we find in Gujarat. So they are saying the temple, the great Jain pilgrimage site in the Shatrunjay Hills near Palitana in Kathiawad, okay, Gujarat, is imposing with the scores of temples clustered together. Okay, this is an important information. Now, in this chapter, we have read about the prolific sculptural and architectural remains in different types of stone, terracotta, and bronze from the 5th to 14th centuries. Okay, so what we have focused from 5th to 14th centuries, undoubtedly there would have been sculptures made of other media like silver and gold, but these would have been melted down and reused. Many sculptures would also have been made of wood and ivory, okay, but these have perished because of their fragility. Often sculptures would have been painted, but again, pigments cannot always survive hundreds of years, especially if the sculptures were exposed to the elements. There was also a rich tradition of painting at this time, but only some, but the only example that survive from this period are murals and few religious buildings. Okay, these are the things. So that's all, okay, about this chapter. That's all that we have, read in this chapter. So we will now quickly go through the, images that we find in today's reading. Okay, so today's reading, whatever images we came across, we will quickly go through those images. Okay, and tomorrow we may have another session to revisit the, entire chapter and see all the images in this chapter that we came across. Okay, so today let us just go through the images, okay, that are there in this chapter. Okay, so this is the third part of this chapter where we are discussing about Buddhist and Jain architectural development. Okay, so we are now going to focus on the images only. Okay, so images for the remaining period of time. We have around 5 minutes. Okay, so this is the image of Mahabodhi temple at Bodh Gaya. Okay, this is the image of Mahabodhi temple at Bodh Gaya. So you can see this particular temple. Okay, so here, like, it is neither a this Nagara style of temple nor it is a Dravidian style of temple. Okay, the reason is given here that, like, why it is not Nagara type. It is strictly speaking neither Dravida nor Nagara. It is narrow like a Nagara temple, but it rises without curving like a Dravida one. So this is the thing. Okay, then here Nalanda, they have given the image of a Nalanda University. So you can see, like, they did not excavate the entire Nalanda University. They have been able to excavate only a portion of it. Why? Because of the contemporary settlement around this Nalanda University. Okay, so contemporary settlement and development don't allow, like, much deeper excavation of the Nalanda site. Okay, over here. That's why, like, only a portion of this thing has been excavated. Now let us see the other image. So this is the image that talks about sculptural details of Nalanda. Okay, so this talks about the sculptural details of Nalanda. Here you can see the Lord Buddha is seated at the top of this particular, Shireen over here, this particular building. So now let us talk about here. Here they have talked about excavated site at Nalanda. Okay, so this is one of the excavated site at Nalanda. Okay, now let us move to the next image. This image, it talks about Lakshmana temple at Sirpur. Okay, so it is Lakshmana temple at Sirpur, and Sirpur is in present day Chhattisgarh, and it is an early Odisha style site. Okay, and in many ways the iconographic and stylistic element of the Buddhist sculptures here are similar to the Nalandas. Okay, this is the thing. Now see this particular image. So it is a very tall statue, freestanding statue. Okay, this is Lord Bahubali at Gomateshwar. Okay, Lord Bahubali at Gomateshwara, Karnataka. Okay, so here you can see Lord Bahubali at Gomateshwara, Karnataka. This is the thing. Okay, this is another image that talks about Jain sculptures at Mount Abu. Okay, this image talks about Jain sculptures at Mount Abu. Okay, after then, let us move further. So over here, like, if we talk about this particular image, it talks about Dilwara temple at Mount Abu. Okay, which temple? It talks about Dilwara temple at Mount Abu. Okay, so here you can see Dilwara temple at Mount Abu. Okay, So this is all that we have, come across today. So we can just scroll down little more. Okay, so I guess some more images are there. So we can simply, go through these images that we find over here. So you can see, like this is an image from Mahabalipuram. Okay, so here from Mahabalipuram, this is an image. So here Mahabalipuram means we have talked about Mamalapuram. Okay, so this is the same place. Over here you can see, like it seems that over here, Arjuna is there. So Arjuna is, standing on 1 feet and he is calling upon the Mother Ganga on the earth. Okay, so he is calling Mother Ganga on the earth. So this is the place. Okay, so there are different interpretation of this particular thing. So this is the place that that was earlier a natural kind of crack on the rock, but the people who have built this particular like who have carved out this particular stone, they have used it in such a manner so that, like, generally the water can flow through it. Okay, when water is flowing through it, it seems like, like Ganga is descending on the earth, and then it naturally goes to a tank like structure from here. And you can see, like, this is just a stone, and on this stone they have carved out, or they have cut it in such a manner, in such a delicate fashion, that, elephants are being shown, human beings are being shown over here. Okay, so temples are also being shown, and it is being shown that, like here image of, I guess, like Lord Vishnu is also being shown over here. Okay, like image of a snake, big snake. Okay, so this is the thing. Now let us move, okay, to the next image over here. So this is the same image, but like this is taken in a different way. So here, some clarity can be seen in this image. Okay, so this is the thing. Now let us move to the next image. Okay, so we are just going to see the images, okay, till the time ends, and after then we will not have another session today. Okay, with this we will simply, end today's session. Okay, so here you can see, this is the image of Ravan shaking Mount Kailasha. Ravan shaking Mount Kailasha. This is the thing. Okay. Rest of the images that are remaining, you can just, I'll be sharing the PDF in the group itself. You can just go through these images yourself, okay, to understand more about it. Okay, Ravan shaking Mount Kailasha. Once again, we come across another image over here. This is the image that talks about carving on outer wall at Kailashnath temple at Ellora. Okay, so this is the carving on outer wall of Kailashnath temple at Ellora. Okay, this is another image. This is very finely delicate image over here. Okay, now